We're back with another episode of Sideline, our second episode. We just want to sort of keep the ball rolling. What we're going to talk about today is Dan McStay's corky, what that sort of means. We're going to touch on how is corky as well. And we're going to touch on Jordan De Goey's bone bruising because that sounds intense, but by all accounts, he's going to be playing the practice matches. Eth, thanks for joining us, man.
No worries, good to be back.
Too easy. Look, let's jump straight into it. What did you want to talk about first?
Let's talk about McStay, I guess. Yep.
Let's do it.
Yeah, some vision came out of his, of the back of his hammy, really.
Yeah.
Where he copped that knock. There was a bit of, I suppose, concern around the injury initially, but having seen the actual injury itself, I mean, it looks pretty nasty. It's pretty discoloured and whatnot, but it's actually positive that we can see that bruising because what can happen is in a more sort of significant case, you can get bruising sort of in the deeper layers of the muscle, which often takes a lot longer to heal, and you've got to sort of nurse it a lot more as well. So yeah, big positive that well, one, he's back out on the track.
Yeah,
and he
back
trained
running
fully. Which is good, and yeah, it's also good to see that the bruising's only in those superficial layers. Because in other cases like Jeremy Howe, he had quite deep bruising, and he actually had to get like surgery to release it.
Yeah, he did.
And there was sort of ongoing complications with that. That's probably more likely to happen in more like a quad or a thigh rather than the hammy. Yeah, the hammy is just a bit sort of thicker, and it's less likely to affect those deeper layers. Whereas the quad can get essentially squashed like into the thigh bone, which is why you can have a bruise or a hematoma in those deeper fibers there.
In layman's terms, right, and we'll get into all the other sort of stuff, a corky, I think, when I think of corky, I think automatically of someone, Charlie horsing you and going in, and in my head, your your muscle sort of dints. Is what I'm that's how I've always thought of corky. Like someone just going straight into and dinting your muscle.
That's not
what actually is it?
That's not a bad way to think about it, I guess. Dint is one way to put it, but it's probably, just micro tearing within the muscle fibers. Usually it's going to be in the lower limb. They can happen in the upper limb as well. But when that... when there's a direct trauma and the muscle compresses against the underlying bone, that can cause quite a deep sort of tearing of those muscle tissues, and then they bleed within the muscle, which is why it becomes a bit sort of swollen and painful, etc. A corky, they happen all the time, particularly for like if you're in the ruck, you're copping one probably every game, which they're not a big deal in in the simple cases. But repeated corkies to the same area can actually sort of accumulate over time. The most famous case would be of Jaron Geary from the Saints. And there's actually this like horrible image of his thigh cut open because they had to release all the fluid and the pressure that had accumulated from a massive corky, basically.
One sec. I'm going to show this picture. I'm going to count down. I'm going to show the picture. If you don't want to see it, skip forward 30 seconds or so. So I'm going to show it in 3, 2, 1, picture. Done. All right. Nice. So if you saw that, wow.
It's nasty.
If you didn't see that and you're scared of gore, don't go back and check that out. So so they cut him open, undid that sort of all that sort of stuff, and then sort of what was his sort of recovery time? And this is like worst. This is not next day. This is just worst case scenario.
So he had something called compartment syndrome, which is where as that muscle's bleeding, basically your muscles are divided into different compartments. And that bleeding can cause pressure and swelling within the compartment, which eventually can essentially squash the surrounding nerves and blood vessels. So eventually you can get, reduced blood flow to that area. You can start to get like nerve loss, etc., and it's full on. So they had to cut it open, release it. I think he was actually back out relatively quickly after that. But the scar, there's a photo of him with the scar as well.
Okay, I'll show that
the
one as
scar
well,
is
yeah.
huge. He had like, I don't know the exact number, like 30 stitches and staples. And it was
yeah.
just full on. But that's the worst case scenario with the corky. And how he had to get a surgery as well. It wasn't as bad.
Yeah.
But he actually did have a vessel rupture in his thigh,
Yeah.
which, you know, if that had gone on for a long period of time, he probably would have ended up in the same sort of situation. But they repaired that relatively quickly,
Yeah.
sort of closed it up and stopped that excess bleeding into the thigh.
So would you say the scale would be mixed, like just a normal corky, right? So we'll say McStay's corky because it's just a normal corky. Howie's, and then Geary's.
Yeah, 100%.
That's the corky scale.
Yeah, definitely.
So on the corky scale, right, which you'll see here.
There actually is a few corky
scales.
Yeah,
Oh, there you go.
You can put them up if you want. There's different you know, variations of them, but I like our scale.
The McStay, the corky scale, McStay's down the bottom.
Yeah.
Good to go. We
100%.
need him. And we'll talk about Jordan De Goey. Jordan De Goey. So Jordan De Goey last week went off. He copped a knock. Some say knee knock, some say it was a calf. It was a lower leg knock. He went off, got scanned straight away because we know his lower legs have been, or his legs just in general have been cooked these last couple of years. So groins, hamstrings, went to Qatar or Dubai to fix those up. Has looked really good. Went off the scan straight away, so that was last Wednesday, and has not reappeared on the track. Last Wednesday, he talked to Mitch Cleary, said he was all good. Scans came back all clear. Yesterday, they've said that he's got bone bruising. Comments were going wild, saying he's at the end of the line, all of these injuries. What is bone bruising?
So, bone bruising is, I mean, the name pretty much says it. It's a bruise within the actual bone itself. So you can actually get a bruise like literally inside your bone without the outside layer being affected.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's pretty bizarre that can even happen, to be honest. And it can also bruise between the layers of bone. So your bone sort of has multiple layers from out to in.
Yep.
You can have bruising between the layers or within the actual sort of central portion of the bone. I don't suspect, like, although they've come out and said, or the other week they said it was sort of bone bruising.
Yep.
But recently they said he got scans and sort of cleared him of any injury. Now, bone bruising will come up on an MRI mainly.
Yep.
So, you know, if he's had a recent scan and they've said there's nothing there, then, you know, it's unlikely that there is bone bruising because it is something that can be pretty easily seen.
Yep.
Also, bone bruising, it sounds pretty innocuous, I guess. Like, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it can actually be a really difficult thing to actually heal and recover from.
Yep.
So we're hoping that, you know, it's not that, and hopefully, you know, the scan's looking clear is a positive sign.
Yeah.
I don't suspect he'd be, you know, if they've said he's sort of good to go and good to play, I doubt there actually is any bone bruising there.
Yeah, because so the timeline of what sort of happened was, get scans, all clear, and then he goes into the gym, into the pool recovery room. We haven't seen him. Channel 7 come out, say it's bone bruising, but then in literally the next sentence they say, oh, but he's going to be playing in 2 weeks in Queensland. So it could be, do you think, to say, you know, clubs at this stage, especially with someone like De Goey, they do keep things close to their chest. Not that they necessarily, I don't want to say that they lie, but they do keep things close to their chest.
Yeah.
But what if it was bone bruising, like they said? What is a sort of timeline for that?
It's a good question, and it's a hard question to answer because
just depending on the severity.
As I said, there's multiple layers, so it depends which layer that bruising's occurred in. In sort of like just a really simple case, it'd usually probably be around like 3 weeks or so. But honestly, like if you have a real bad bone bruise and if you cop sort of repeated either knocks or injuries to that area, they can last for like 6 to 12 months.
Oh, wow.
So, because each time you knock it, if it's not fully healed,
redoes it
it
again.
restarts that
Yeah.
process, and the bone bleeds again, and it's just sort of, it compounds.
Yeah.
So a bone bruise isn't one to take lightly.
Okay.
But as I said, I don't think it's actually the case.
Yeah, because the scans came clear because they said that he's going to play.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Which would be unlikely if it
Right.
was,
So
you
if
know.
it was actually bone bruising, like
Yeah.
Channel 7 at the moment are claiming to be, he wouldn't be playing.
No.
the practice
Well, I
games.
wouldn't be playing him.
Yeah, fair enough. Because the practice games would happen, 3 weeks or so after the initial injury, and he hasn't been kicking the ball or anything that we've seen out on the ground.
Yeah, and I suspect they initially were thinking it was bone bruising, and they've kept him off the track
Yep.
whilst they send him for those scans and just clear that up. Because it needs time to heal, and if you're loading it, you're just delaying that healing process and just exacerbating it. So I think they've done the right thing of just like I said, same thing with mixed day, they're just taking extra precaution, waiting till they got the scan results, which they have now, and taking it from there. Obviously, it's still the preseason, so if there's any doubt at all, they're going to be extremely cautious and get things looked at as soon as possible. If it was, back end of the season, a lot of these injuries would just sort of, they'd just sort of play through them and wouldn't worry too much about them.
Okay.
But obviously they want to go into the season having the players as good as possible. So taking extra precaution there, for sure.
By all accounts, Geordie will be playing that first practice game in a couple of weeks up in Brisbane, and there's not really any other sort of injuries to report. We've got Harvey Harrison returning from his ACL injury in about July, August, so he might play VFL finals. He's looking really good. Bunch of concussion stuff that everyone's sort of working through, but Jordan Ngoe and McStay were the biggest concerns that you guys were saying. We haven't really cleared it up, but we know what they are now, and we know what to look out for. So, Eth, thanks so much for coming on again, mate.
It's been a pleasure.
Done.
Looking forward to the next one.
Well, yeah, hopefully it's just a little bit of niggles the next one.
Yeah, exactly right.
Done.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, guys, like, comment, subscribe, tell your family, tell your friends, tell your pets, and until next time, double shaggers. Swoop you later.